What if the nutrients missing from the modern diet are actually accelerating cognitive decline and dementia and Alzheimer's? And what if this is shockingly easy to fix? Dr. Steve Blake holds a doctorate in nutritional biochemistry and is a faculty member at the University of Hawaii School of Medicine, where he teaches nutritional biochemistry. He has served as the director of nutritional neuroscience at the Maui Memory Clinic and as a research scientist at the Neuroscience Institute at Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience. He is the author of Nutritional Neuroscience, Mastering Diabetes from the Inside Out, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, and multiple editions of the Diet Doctor software, which calculates exact micronutrient levels across thousands of foods. His research focuses on antioxidant defense systems, neural inflammation modulation, lipid peroxidation reduction, nutrient density optimization, and micronutrient deficiency patterns in neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's. That means he's really smart. He is known for translating biochemical pathways into practical food-based interventions with quantifiable impacts on brain physiology. What if the nutrients missing from the modern diet are actually accelerating cognitive decline and dementia and Alzheimer's? And what if this is shockingly easy to fix? I want to welcome my next guest, Dr. Steve Blake, who is an expert nutritional biochemist. Dr. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me today. And it's not just what we don't have in our diet, but what we already are eating too much of in our diet that could impact the brain as well.
100%. And I think you'd agree that nutritional biochemistry can be complicated, but the stakes are extremely high.
Our brains, I think, are our most important thing. We've seen people with broken legs, even long-term cancer, and it's nothing compared to losing your brain because that's who you are.
Of course. So where to get started? Because I know you've researched so much of this, and what nutrients could be missing that are impacting our brains?
Well, what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about the Hawaii Dementia Prevention Trial. It's a trial that I designed. I ran it at the Hawaii Alzheimer's Disease Center. It was a huge team of people working with me on that. As you know, it's very difficult doing a clinical trial. So what we did is we took people, we tried to get them in the mild cognitive impairment stage. But by the time everyone was enrolled, as you know, and for your listeners, the mini mental status exam is from 25 to 30 is normal. From 20 to 25 is mild cognitive impairment, and below 20 is getting into dementia. So we started at an average of 19 on that scale, which I think is about right because we had some people who weren't thinking very clearly, and yet their brains hadn't shrunk to half their size, so there was some hope there. So how high would you say we would have to go in order to show good results from that trial, from 19 up to how high?
Well, I mean, my experience with Alzheimer's or dementia patients is, Alzheimer's can be it's a tough disease because for some of my patients, every month their score is getting worse. They're going from 19 to 18 to 17. So what I start when I'm talking to patients is say, if we can stay at 19, that's actually a win when you expect to every month to get worse. I don't know if that's what you're asking.
9 months, we would expect the control group went down 1.5 points
right
over 9 months, exactly
right.
As you say. Yeah. So how high of a number would we need to get in order to show good success?
Well, I mean, of course, in an ideal world, I want to get people, back up to 25, for example.
Didn't happen. Okay. We got them up to 29.
I love it.
Yeah, in 9 months. And actually the first 3 months were, they're up in 26, 27, and then plateaued a little higher. That's high normal. That's fine.
Yeah. And 29 is almost perfect. So please share with us, what did you do to basically reverse dementia? Because going from 19 to 29, that's reversing dementia.
Well, early stage, yes. And that's important too. We don't want to give people hopes, if they're in mid-stage Alzheimer's or late stage Alzheimer's, that's kind of tough. But for these people, and I designed this trial with 16 interventions. And, the scientists on the trial were saying, that's too many. How will you know which one did it? And I said, I don't care which one did it. I want these people to get better. So, and all of the interventions are safe, they're reasonable, and can be done by people at home. You don't need to pay someone thousands of dollars or spend thousands on things. Most of it you can do yourself. It's just not hard. So let's see. First, I want to talk about the food changes. And we're dealing with a population of people here in Hawaii who are not healthy eaters. As far as getting them all to go plant-based on day one, it just not going to happen. What we did, yes.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's just take, when I hear the word healthy, I have to stop you just because when I talk to patients and people in general, literally, and I ask, what is your diet? Literally, regardless of what they eat, 90 to 95% of people tell me they eat healthy. So,
that's right. That's right. Beer for lunch and a steak for dinner. That's healthy.
Right. Or I had something that was green today. Or I had fruit juice. I had fruit juice that was 10% real fruit. So that's healthy, right?
Well, I'm talking about the typical Hawaiian lunch is a bento box with a big chunk of beef or pork and some white rice, and that's it. So in other words, I only made 4 food changes, and those were tough. Okay, the first one was pretty easy. We said, can you please eat 1 cup of blueberries or strawberries, or if not, red grapes every day. And that's for the anthocyanins that can get up in the brain, protected from inflammation and oxidation to slow down the death of brain cells. And we had pretty good compliance on that. If they couldn't get fresh things, we allowed them to drink grape juice until they could get to the store. So that was one intervention, easy. Anyone listening can do that. And the blueberries are really quite delicious. I throw them in my oatmeal every morning.
So, Dr. Steve, besides the adding the berries, what were the other steps that you made to help these patients?
So, number 2 out of 4 food changes was just we added an ounce of sunflower seeds ground up, either in a coffee grinder or in a blender, and an ounce of walnuts. And the sunflower seeds are very rich in the alpha tocopherol form of vitamin E. And the walnut's very rich in the gamma tocopherol form of vitamin E. And so between those two, we're adding protection to the brain to help slow the death of brain cells, keep those brain cells intact. And so that was number 2, pretty easy.
You're right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
They're ground up because many people at 65 or older have bowel pockets and are not supposed to eat nuts unless they are ground up or blended or in a nut butter form.
Got it. And were these roasted or salted or
raw?
Prepared?
Raw nuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Of course. So that's 2. Now, the next one, and I know you read my recent paper that included advanced glycation end products, and I've written some others on those too. We ask people to try not to form advanced glycation end products when they cook. So basically, if it's a food source, animal source food, we ask them not to fry, barbecue, broil, or grill these foods so that they wouldn't form the advanced glycation end products, which, as you know, increase inflammation in the brain.
Right. And specifically, there's even a receptor to these AGEs.
Yes, it's called RAGE.
Yes.
Receptor for advanced glycation end products. I think RAGE is quite a nice name for it.
Yeah, and it's in the brain, and it's basically, if you eat these products or if they're in your body, they can unfortunately cause inflammation. Is
Yeah,
that
the
right?
RAGE receptor, interestingly, also accepts amyloid beta, is another trigger for it. And they're found in the lining of the blood vessels, as well as the microglia have receptors, the RAGE receptors. So you can initiate this chronic brain inflammation with these advanced glycation end products. So we asked them to stop that. And that was tough for people because a lot of fast food is grilled or fried. It's hard to find a fast food that isn't. Now, if the food is not of animal origin, it contains water. And this interrupts the shift base and the formation of the Maillard reaction so that they don't form these advanced glycation end products. That's
Right.
animal-based foods only.
Okay, but let's just be clear, though. You can have these AGEs in some plant-based foods, like even olive oil will have some of these AGEs, right?
A little bit. The olive oil, you see, doesn't have water in it. So they
Right.
can form in olive oil. And sometimes when they roast almonds, they can form a small amount of AGEs. But the amount in olive oil and almonds is tiny compared to what's in food. And most of the advanced glycation end product studies are showing come from meat. That's the common way to get 90% of it. So we did the best we could with people that way.
So again, explain what was the last nutritional change that people had to make?
So the fourth and last food change was to keep saturated fats below 6% of calories. And typically on a 1,800 calorie diet, that's 12 grams or less of saturated fat. I know for me, eating plant foods, whole plant foods, it's difficult to stay under 12. It's really not that easy. And so for people on a typical American diet, it's even harder. This was the toughest change. We had a team of dietitians, and they were really working hard to help people switch their food to foods that were lower in saturated fat. The reason it's so crucial is that the saturated fat, for one thing, when our cell membranes are populated by saturated fats instead of monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats, the phospholipids, the fatty acids and the phospholipids are straight, and they don't allow transmembrane receptors such as the LDL receptor, by the way, also the insulin receptor. So these LDL receptors simply are fewer in number, perhaps half as many. So the LDL circulates longer, gets oxidized, sticks to the wall of the artery, and creates this atherosclerotic plaque, which does two things. One, it plugs up the arteries, arterioles, and capillaries going into the brain, so we can't think as clearly without enough glucose, blood sugar, and nutrients. And two, it creates vascular dementia, which is multiple tiny strokes. And these tiny strokes just eat up a little bit of your brain, your memory here, your thinking ability there. And vascular dementia, in my opinion, is always a part of dementia, whatever type it is. So what's nice, though, is that if we can reduce the saturated fat, which we had some success with, then within weeks, people are thinking better. It's something we can do that actually, not that we can do, it's something people can do that actually has an effect that's almost immediate, that their blood flow gets better. And as we know from other studies over the years, you can clear out all of that arterial plaque, the atherosclerotic plaque. But at least just not introducing them anymore makes a big difference. So those were the four: the berries, the nuts, the advanced glycation end products, and the saturated fat. Sounds simple. It was hard for the people in our trial because most of them were used to a typical Hawaiian diet, which is similar to a typical American diet and not real healthy.
Right. And let me ask you a little bit more about cutting out the saturated fats, because my experience personally, and I've seen it in other people too, is when you start lowering the amount of saturated fat in your diet, your brain is used to, I mean, people are addicted. People are addicted to fat. And if you suddenly lower it, people can get withdrawal headaches. And have you run into that?
Well, what I've noticed is that feeling of fat satisfaction when people eat a lot of saturated fats. And knowing this, vegan food is often polluted with, if I may use the word, palm oil and coconut oil, which makes the cookies or crackers or whatever that people are eating much more satisfying. They satisfy hunger for a longer period of time. You know, the dopamine effect, the happiness effect, that getting all those calories in your stomach and not feeling hungry for longer. So people have to get used to eating perhaps a little more frequently and higher quality food with less saturated fat. Now, fat in general is different because the polyunsaturated fats, all of them, are going to make that membrane, they are bent in 3 dimensions. So the cell membrane is like this, and the transmembrane receptors can easily implant in there. And so then you get more of them. So the LDL stops circulating, delivers its cholesterol or vitamin E or fatty acids to the cells, and everybody's happy. So it's a lot of authors make the mistake, I won't mention any names, but that all fats and oils are bad. Now, I think you and I agree that it's really best to get our fats and oils from intact, whole nuts and seeds, avocado, olives, rather than the extracted oil. There's lots of good reasons for that.
Right. And do you agree that, I mean, my concern is for people who end up with a high-fat diet, especially for years and years and years, often those fats can build up in blood vessels to the brain, for example, the carotid or blood vessels within the brain. So is it just the saturated fats that are causing the vascular problems from your perspective?
It really is. However, of course, I'll mention trans fats too. Trans fats are also straight fatty acids, and they pack together really tightly in the cell membrane phospholipids. So you really can't get enough of those cell receptors. I have a book and paper I've written on diabetes and how this increases insulin resistance. And the saturated fats are one of the main factors, not all fats, but saturated fats. And with LDL, the same thing, trans fats and saturated fats. Now, monounsaturated fats just have 1 point of desaturation, whether it's oleic or palmitoleic acid. I wrote a textbook on fats and oils. It's called Fats and Oils Demystified. It's on my website, drsteveblake.com, very much like my name here on the screen. And so you can download that for under $10. And it has quizzes and everything. It's really fun to learn more about fats and oils. And there are, as Udo Erasmus says, fats that heal, fats that kill.
Right. And along those lines, you mentioned trans fats. Fortunately, in this country, I think trans fats are being outlawed in terms of added trans fats. But isn't it true that animal products, many of them also naturally have trans fats?
Right. Some animal products do and some don't. So cows, for example, can biohydrogenate fats and oils in their rumen. And so you're getting trans fats from beef and dairy products. Sheep can also do this. Now, pigs cannot, chicken cannot, turkey cannot, fish cannot. So the trans fats from animals are concentrated in beef, milk, and if people eat mutton, then it would be there too. And yes, they have banned most of the hydrogenated, artificial trans fats from the American diet. Finally.
And so those are the 4 changes that you made. What you kind of hinted earlier that it's not as simple as just those 4 things, that there are many other things to talk about. One thing I wanted to ask you about that's been in the news on social media recently is vitamin B12. And I know you've written on the topic before. Why is vitamin B12 important, and should people supplement with B12?
Okay, well, second question, yes. I would say any diet should supplement with vitamin B12. It's cheap, it's very safe. And so that's a big yes. Why is it important? Good thing you asked, because when we form amyloid beta in the brain, the way it works is genes on the cell will produce 2 enzymes. We have the gamma secretase and the beta secretase. These 2 enzymes go and they snip off the amyloid precursor protein, sticks out of the cell, and they snip it off so that you get a 42 amino acid peptide called beta amyloid. This beta amyloid is toxic to the brain. Then it fibrillizes, and that's more toxic to the brain. Then the fibrils aggregate, and they're very toxic to the brain. And then they form the Alzheimer's plaque, the senile plaque that is the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. They're actually more toxic after they formed and before they're hidden away in an Alzheimer's plaque. Now, if those Alzheimer's plaques have advanced glycation end products associated with them, then they also can be just as toxic. So why is vitamin B12 important? Because we have a blood chemical called homocysteine. I know you've heard of that one. It's a high risk factor for heart disease and for Alzheimer's disease and dementia in general.
And it's an amino acid, but it's not a good one that you want lots of, right?
Well, what happens is when we get enough folate, a B vitamin, and you get that in green leafies and beans, we get enough folate and enough vitamin B12. It takes this homocysteine, this bad homocysteine, and turns it into a really good thing called S-adenosylmethionine. S-adenosylmethionine, or SAMe, or SAM for short. SAMe is how the supplements are sold. So SAMe we normally make in our bodies. What SAMe does, and this is fascinating, it goes to those very genes that make the beta secretase and the gamma secretase, and it puts them to sleep. It quenches them. It methylates them. They stop producing the enzyme, so we stop producing the amyloid beta. Right away, our brains are feeling better without all that toxic amyloid beta and fibrils and aggregates running around in it. So this is something that can be done. So in our study, we did use real folate, not folic acid. Folic acid is used in virtually every supplement I've seen, and folic acid is a synthetic analog of real folate. Unfortunately, it can increase cancer risk if the aggregate in the diet is over 1,000 micrograms, which it easily can be if you're supplementing and eating fortified foods.
Can I ask you, you mentioned folic acid is probably not what you want to be supplementing. What about folinic acid? That's been in the news, in the press recently.
Folinic. Again, folate is the form it's found in the human body.
Right.
Folate is the form it's found in green vegetables and in beans. Folate is the form you want. There's a special, it's hard to get folate in a supplement. I made this, now when we did our study and I had all of these, the people in the study were able to get the supplements, but the people who weren't in the study heard about their success. You know, we worked at a very large center, 24,000 patient visits. You know, it is big, the biggest neuroscience center in the Pacific. So people heard about it and they wanted to get those supplements, but we couldn't. There was a reserve for trial participants. So I made this up, Brain and Body Food, and this has most of the things that we could stuff into it from the trial. And when I went to put in real folate, the manufacturers, you know, kind of laughed and said, you have to get that license from Germany.
Whoa.
And I did, because I wanted the real folate.
The real thing.
I don't want something that could be potentially harmful. And you see, folic acid has to go through some steps in order to become folate in the body. And that's where you get into problems. So you want real folate, vitamin B12. Now, again, vitamin B12, known as cobalamin, can be in the form of cyanocobalamin, which is the cheapest way to put it in a supplement. Guess what? Everybody uses that. Except I like methylcobalamin because that's the active way that it's used in the human body. So I put 200 micrograms of methylcobalamin in the study and in this supplement, Brain and Body Food. So I wanted people to get the very best. But I have found that the studies on cyanocobalamin are successful in restoring blood levels, and that's okay to use that. I like the methylcobalamin because it actually reduces cyanide in the body instead of increasing it. And if you're a smoker, that's really the right way to go, or if you're exposed to other pollutants, which, well, many of us are.
What about vitamin D? Do you think vitamin D is important for brain health?
When people walk across the parking lot of Castle Medical Center, they're getting a big chunk of vitamin D. And so there's no way, in Boston in the winter, if we'd run the study, yes, we could have used vitamin D. And I've been asked that at Grand Rounds. Why didn't you use vitamin D? We couldn't, because we couldn't control for it. You really can get a lot of vitamin D. And as you know, in Florida, you walk across a parking lot, just to your face, you can get 1,000 IUs. It's pretty strong. So unfortunately, we didn't. But using folate and vitamin B12, we're able to methylate the genes that make the amyloid plaques and stop a lot of the toxicity and brain damage that was going on. So that was one of our techniques.
Very good. And one of the things that comes to mind while I'm asking about these different nutrients is people have different genetics. Some people have MTHFR genetics. It's interesting. It seems like all these biochemical pathways, there's a small number of people who will have a problem with the enzymes that catalyze or promote those pathways. The
MTHFR is luckily very rare.
Right, yeah. Right. But some mutation, I've seen more than 50% of the people can have some mutation in one of the many
methylation pathway genes.
Yeah, sure. We're doing the best we can, and we had good results, so that helps too. And again, I'm working across 16 nutrients and 4 dietary changes. So maybe not everyone works for every person, but the aggregate together is what I'm looking for, is to get people better. And then later they can say, well, this part of it I could drop off. It's not working.
That makes perfect sense. Are there any, I know you worked with 16, are there any other nutrients that you think are worthy of talking about now?
In addition to the nuts and seeds, a mixed tocopherol vitamin E. Again, almost impossible to get real vitamin E in a supplement. But I worked with the manufacturer and I got the real deal. The problem with vitamin yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, you can get synthetic vitamin E's out there, but unfortunately they're not healthy, is my understanding.
Well, yes, but because I'm talking to a biochemist, I can tell you more, and it's really fun. If you look at alpha tocopherol, the synthetic alpha tocopherol is actually a mixture of 8 isomers or very similar molecules, and they can bend in the S or R way at different points, 3 different points. So real vitamin E alpha tocopherol is RRR-alpha tocopherol, and it must be stated so by FDA regulations on the label of a vitamin. And I would be completely surprised if you could find any vitamin in any store that has real RRR-alpha tocopherol in it. So if it starts with an S, 4 of them are completely worthless. They look like vitamin E, but they don't work. And 3 of them have greatly reduced ability to be an antioxidant. So when you're taking the all-racemic form as the synthetic form, then it's going into your liver, it's getting implanted on LDL, traveling to the brain, it's a little fatty finger goes into your cell membrane, it's sitting out there on the surface, and if it finds a free radical and it wants to neutralize it, it can't do it. It's like a rent-a-cop with a plastic gun and no bullets. It doesn't work. So you really need the real deal. So we use the real deal. Also, in addition to alpha tocopherol, there's beta, gamma, and delta tocopherols. And these all work together. Alpha is, by definition, vitamin E, but the others are very important too. So we use them all. So we use vitamin E. Now, another interesting fact is that when vitamin E is implanted on that brain cell membrane, and it is successful in neutralizing a free radical, it could damage that membrane and kill the brain cell, it needs vitamin C to recharge, technically called reduce it. So then it can go again and again. It eventually wears out and you need more. But you consider 100,000 free radical attacks on every cell in our body every hour. That's a lot of attacks. We really need defense. So I added vitamin C and vitamin E, real vitamin E, impossible to find in a supplement. I did use real vitamin E in my brain and body food that I take, to keep my brain sharp. But the manufacturer kept arguing with me. He said, this costs more than everything else in the bottle. Why don't you use the cheap stuff? And he didn't get my explanation, but you do.
I do. Well, I mean, health comes first, and the last thing you want to do is actually be hurting people.
So I was just chatting about how vitamin C is needed to recharge vitamin E.
Right.
As antioxidants that protect the brain cells from death. If we can keep those brain cells, we're going to think a lot better. It's really obvious. And so they're not the only antioxidants, though. Our brain also relies upon our own interior antioxidants, especially for the brain, glutathione peroxidase and superoxide dismutase. These 2 enzymes protect our brain from oxidative cell death, from brain cell death. But glutathione peroxidase does not work without selenium.
Right.
It needs it. It is ineffective without it. And superoxide dismutase, there's 2 forms, but the major form needs copper, zinc, and manganese. So these 4 trace minerals we supplied in exactly the right amount. As you know, each mineral must be supplied at an amount that's above the required daily amount, but below the toxic upper limit.
Right.
So we supplied those at that specific level. So with all of those as antioxidants, that really helped a lot.
That's beautiful. What about a nutrient like lutein? Was that one of your?
Lutein's great. Among the carotenoids, lutein is the highest level in the brain and the eyes too, and the retina. And lutein's a great carotenoid, and I encourage people to eat their fruits and vegetables to get plenty of lutein. And it can be taken as a supplement. I have no problem with that. Lutein or astaxanthin. In the brain and body food that I made for people not in the trial, I used a mixed carotenoid because we have heard of problems when you just use beta carotene. So I used alpha carotene, beta cryptoxanthin, and I got a nice broad spectrum of carotenoids in there. So yeah, lutein's nice. We didn't use it in our trial. It would have been a nice addition, but the pills got a little bulky, by the time we put all this stuff in them. And so we had to keep people happy about gobbling them down. Now, I mentioned the S-adenosylmethionine, the SAMe, we used the folate and the B12. We also gave people SAMe itself. So again, just like the vitamin E, we're on both sides. We really don't want any more toxic amyloid beta in the brain. So we use both. Now, also, another antioxidant in the brain is coenzyme Q10. And coenzyme Q10 is not only the only fat-soluble antioxidant made by the human body. Okay, that's pretty important right there. But as you know, it's crucial in the electron transport chain to make energy in the mitochondria. So it has two functions. And these two functions are crucial. So we also gave people coenzyme Q10. Very safe, normally made in the body. No problems with drug interactions or safety or side effects at all.
Can I ask you, what form did you use Q10 or did you use ubiquinone?
Oh, ubiquinone, it's easy to remember, use none of ubiquinone. Ubiquinol is the form we used, and that's the one you want to use. Great question. You know about this stuff.
Yeah, like you, I've been studying this for decades. So.
Yeah. That's fun.
Awesome.
So yeah, we used ubiquinol form, about 200 milligrams. Nice, safe amount, but again, antioxidant and helping energy. Energy is important in the brain.
Very cool.
As you know, people are having dementia. Their brains are tired, especially in the afternoon.
Are there any other nutrients you recommended or focused on specifically for mitochondrial health besides ubiquinol?
Well, in the study, no, but in the brain and body food, I put in all of the B vitamins in their exact right amount. Now, I know you like NMN, a form of niacin, but I actually use niacin and niacinamide together in the supplement so that we can form our own active enzyme forms of the vitamin B3, which is niacin.
That's awesome.
So in the brain and body food, I get those every day, and I think it's good for my brain. But in the trial, let's see, what else we use, and this is very foreign to American neurologists, is 2 medicinal plants. Wow. All over the world, they use medicinal plants. In Europe and Africa and in China very much, and India very much. But in America, doctors don't use these plants. However, one, ginkgo biloba, sure you've heard of it.
Sure.
It's been extensively tested with randomized controlled trials, really well tested. And I have mega studies where every test shows that it really helped with thinking, memory, cognition, and it's neuroprotective, something that the drugs used for Alzheimer's are not. So it actually helps protect the brain cells while it's making you think. Now, ginkgo, one of its biggest effects is that it allows the blood to travel into capillaries by thinning it. So you can't use it along with any other blood thinning medications. Warfarin, Pradaxis, or Alto Eliquis, any of the blood thinning medications are contraindicated in our study and are contraindicated for people taking ginkgo biloba. It's not that scary, but still, in an abundance of caution, we did that.
Got it. And you weren't using other blood thinners like nattokinase or?
No, we're not using nattokinase. But the ginkgo really works well to get the blood into the brain. In Europe, students use it for exams. And it takes perhaps weeks or months to build up fully, but it's noticeable. I make one other supplement, and that's a mixture of the standardized extract of ginkgo biloba. Now, standardized extract is very important. The terpene lactones are 24% in every single capsule. The ginkolicides are under 1%, and we standardize on others too. And this is the form that's been tested all around the world, over and over again. This is the form I use. And I first supplied people with that who we're working with, and then I realized that they're always tired. So I mix it with the standardized extract of ginseng, Panax ginseng. So now I have a mixture of both of them, and people are happy with that because thinking clearer and not getting tired in the afternoon are both really important for people with brain problems.
That's awesome. And you mentioned 2 botanicals. Were those the 2, or was there a different one?
No, we just use ginkgo biloba, and we use one other, and that's Gotu kola. Gotu kola has been used in India forever, and it's has no contraindications or problems whatsoever. Oh, did I mention, I want to step back one time, the SAMe, when we use that, we excluded people who were on antidepressant medications because SAMe is also used. Did you know it's as effective as Celebrex for knee osteoarthritis pain? Wow.
Yeah.
Celebrex is strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good
so
stuff.
it's that good, but it also really is helpful for depression. So it's an antidepressant. So we did exclude people. If you're taking SAMe, you should not be on any psychoactive medication, Prozac or anything like that. I just want to mention that in abundance of caution so people know about this. Those are the only 2 drug interactions in the whole trial, but wanted to mention those.
Interesting. I mean, I've seen data that people on long-term Prozac are at higher risk of getting dementia, Alzheimer's. So
a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, the list goes on and on of drugs that damage cognition and increase your risk of dementia. For dementia, donepezil is given, and that is acetylcholinesterase that gobbles up the enzyme that it's an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor that gobbles up the enzyme that gobbles up the acetylcholine transmitter. But a lot of these drugs work the opposite way, and they actually make it so that it slows the synapses. Maybe if you're very excitable, this is helpful, but it's very bad for the brain. There's huge classes of drugs that are very bad for the brain, and we didn't address those in our trial. That would be something to address as well.
Fair enough.
So that's it. You got the 12 supplements and you got the 4 food changes. That's what we did. And for myself, I don't take the coenzyme Q10 or the SAMe because my brain's fine and I don't think I need it. But I do take, and I don't take the ginkgo ginseng very often because I don't need more stimulation.
Okay.
I like you, we're energetic guys and our brains are energetic and we don't need that. I use exercise, to stimulate myself.
That's great. And you also mentioned Gotu kola. That's not in Coca-Cola, right?
No.
Okay.
No. The active ingredient in Coca-Cola used to be cocaine.
Right.
But they took it out and put in caffeine instead.
Right.
No.
Wow.
No, Gotu kola is it's an herb, and again, we use a standardized extract, so we knew people were getting what they're getting. There's a lot of herbs on the market that are not what they say they are, adulterated or just wrong.
Wow. If we could take a step back and talk a little bit more about, at the beginning, AGEs, the advanced glycation end products. You mentioned that many animal-based products, meats, especially if they're cooked, will have high levels, but aren't things like tofu, if you cook beans, won't you also potentially form these AGEs?
Well, no, and the reason for this is because of water. Water interrupts the Maillard reaction so that you can't form the advanced glycation end product. So if you have a shish kebab with bell peppers and tofu and mushrooms and things, none of those are going to form AGEs in any noticeable amount. But if you put on steak, then that's going to form the AGEs. So we really aren't very worried about non-animal food derived products as much. And again, olive oil was way down on the list. Really small amount. I don't recommend olive oil, and neither do you anyway. Why not eat the olives? And they have none of the AGE, advanced glycation end products. Yeah, good point.
Awesome. And then what do you think about the role of omega-3s for the brain?
Well, again, having written a book on fats and oils, a textbook, a college textbook, I actually just read over my chapter I have a whole chapter on how the plant-based omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid is transformed into EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and then into DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. So our bodies can do this, and we do this. Most Americans get perhaps 150 milligrams of EPA in their diet if they're eating fish or seaweed, but our need is more like 400, and so they're making it in their bodies too. It's similar to cholesterol in a way. We make cholesterol the right amount. We don't need any more. We also can now. The ability to make EPA depends on some enzymes, and so if I may,
please.
You want to hear this from anyone else, and I apologize to the audience if this sounds a little technical, but it's fun, especially for biochemists. So you have the alpha-linolenic acid. It's 18 carbons long. It's an N3, and it from the omega end, it's desaturated at 0.36 and 9. So delta 6 desaturase reaches in from the delta end and desaturates 0.12. Now you have elongase make it into 20 carbon, and it's desaturated 3, 6, 9, and 12. Now you have delta 5 desaturase reaching into the 15 point, desaturating that, and guess what? That's EPA. Done. And DHA is a very similar process. It actually is made a little bit longer, so it can use an enzyme, and then it becomes DHA. So we make those in our bodies routinely. However, there are many limiting factors. Many nutrients are important for this to go on. And so we have to be well nourished in order to make those. Several of the B vitamins, several minerals. It's a bit of a list of things that you have to have enough of to do that. And most importantly, you must have enough alpha-linolenic acid in your diet. And so people who don't eat flax, hemp, chia, or walnuts are not likely to have enough omega-3, plant-based omega-3 in their diet. And in that case, recommended to get 2 or 3 grams a day of these, of alpha-linolenic acid. Then you can form it. The other side is that linoleic acid, the omega-6 found in plants, this, if it's too high, will use up most of the delta-6 desaturase and reduce our ability to make EPA in the body. So when you say the bottled oils are not good for you, one of the reasons is because they normally have a lot of that linoleic acid that is going to make it harder for us to make our own EPA.
Interesting. That makes sense. What about, I think some of the listeners may be confused because at the beginning you said you should limit the amount of saturated fat in your diet, yet there are many Alzheimer's experts who are recommending a ketogenic diet that's extremely high in saturated fat. So who, this could be confusing. What do people do with this information?
Oh boy. Yes. And I know exactly who's recommending it. And the thing is, okay, brain cells, you look at a PET scan of Alzheimer's brain and you see that the activity in the cells, the glucose using brain cells are very limited compared to a normal brain. So they're thinking, oh, well, let's supply them with ketone bodies. Well, they usually say ketones. What they're really using is ketone bodies. There are 3 ketone bodies. Acetoacetate, you know what nail polish remover is? Acetone. That's one of them. And beta hydroxybutyrate. Those are the 3 ketone bodies they're recommending to supply your brain with energy. Okay, first of all, acetone is really not a great thing for your brain in any way, shape, or form. Yes, your brain can make energy out of it, but reluctantly. So what happens is the actual ketogenic diet, where you're getting a mixed saturated fats and all this stuff, that's terrible for the brain. I've analyzed the diets. One of the light keto diets used for the brain I looked at, and they only had 1/4 to 1/2 the amount of calcium that human bodies require. That's really a small amount. And they're deficient in 8 of the 10 necessary vitamins. Okay. So this is not a diet designed to, how about vitamin B3 niacin and all the great things it does for energy metabolism and mitochondria? This diet is lacking in so many things. However, if people get a few ketone bodies, it might perk them up a little bit at first. Wow, their arteries are clogging. Wow, they're getting more and more tiny strokes and their vascular dementia is progressing. This, to me, is not a smart way to do it. We know what kind of a diet is good for the brain, and it's not a ketogenic diet. As I consider it very dangerous. Now, there's one other way to do it to promote ketogenesis that's less dangerous. Okay, and that is using, there are 3 short-chain fatty acids, capric, caprylic, and caproic. And those 3 are 4, 6, and 8. No, 6, 8, and 10, carbons long. Those actually are not going to go in the same pathways to create atherosclerotic plaque, even though they're saturated. However, they can be converted into the ketone bodies and supply the brain during times of starvation, long-term fasting. Another thing, the ketogenesis diet people are saying, well, you should fast overnight for 12 to 16 hours and then you'll start making ketones. No. It takes much longer than that. It takes days. And the fasting experts know about this. They test for ketone bodies, and
like when I worked at True North, the fasting center for a few years, you're right. It would take 3 or 4 days to get into deep ketosis when you're just drinking water.
Absolutely, and so the ketogenic diet, I think, is a very dangerous and bad way to deal with brain problems. I know that this is being recommended by some people. And let's face it, you know why? They like their meat.
Sure. And to be fair, I think in the short term, when you're producing the ketones, you're also producing that in the gut. And similarly to butyric acid is stabilizing for the gut. I've seen people where their gut may temporarily improve.
I'm going to have to disagree on that one. Butyrate is made in the large intestine from fermentation of fiber.
Right.
And the ketogenic diet is very low in fiber. Okay.
Right.
So fiber is really crucial for that. It is anti-inflammatory and is essential for the cells lining to reduce inflammation and for their energy production. So it's really great.
Right. But
when you eat the capric, caproic, and caprylic acid, if you can find that, now normally it's just coconut oil with lots of bad saturated fat.
Right.
But if you actually eat those, they go through a different pathway. They go into your stomach and they're absorbed into the portal blood circulation and go to the liver. Now, the other fats and oils are made into chylomicrons, which go into the lymph system and are dumped into the bloodstream. Completely different ways of absorbing them. Most of the short-chain saturated fatty acids are burned for energy in the liver long before they get to the brain.
Got it. So here's a question about a different diet, kind of on the other spectrum. There are people advocating eat 80% carbohydrates, 10% protein, 10% fats.
Fat.
What do you think about
the 80-10-10 diet? I actually watched your interview on that diet. I have analyzed that diet too. One problem, 35 grams of protein a day. Now, we don't need a lot of protein, but 35 is not enough. Okay? That's really, really dangerous to eat that low of a protein diet. I have analyzed diets for decades and decades. I have my own software called The Diet Doctor. It's fascinating. You'd love it. I analyze for every fatty acid, every vitamin, every mineral, and everything, carotenoids, tocopherols, you name it. I've really made it big. And it's got over 292,000 foods to choose from, healthy and not healthy, too. Your Twinkies are in there, too. So when I analyze the diets, I really get a view into this. These diets, the 80-10-10, you cannot get enough of your essential fatty acids on a 10% fat diet. It is impossible. No matter what you eat, you can't do it. I've recalculated the best diet, which all of the fats are coming from flax and walnuts. At 17% fat, you can just barely make it on the essential fatty acids. Okay, so I know a lot of doctors have said, under 10% with your fat. It's extremely damaging. Another reason is vitamin E is found in fatty foods. You cannot get enough vitamin E on a 10% fat diet, period. And the worst part, all those beautiful carotenoids in the fruits and vegetables that you would love to absorb are fat soluble. And without a fatty trigger, you don't make cholecystokinin to trigger bile release, and you cannot absorb them. They will not absorb it on an under 10% fat diet. So you're wasting all your money and all those beautiful carotenoids, which protect the brain. They protect our arteries. They protect everything. They're so good, but you're not getting them. So for those reasons and many more, the 10% fat doesn't work. The 10% protein works fine. And that's actually the recommended amount by the World Health Organization, the US, all of them. That's 10% of protein's perfect. I'm happy with that. And again, with carbohydrates, it's such a vague term, isn't it? Twinkies are carbohydrates. They are.
They sure are.
And beans have carbohydrates, but they're not the same food.
Of course.
So just saying carbohydrates not enough. If like a recent speaker that I analyzed was using beans and purple sweet potatoes for lunch. Now, some people would say, oh, that's too many carbs. That's beautiful food.
Oh, yeah.
That's satisfying so many of our nutrient needs just at lunch. It's amazing. So it really makes a difference. You can't say carbs. You really need to say what the food is.
Exactly. Wow. If we could change gears for a minute and talk about other, I would call it anti-nutrients, things that are in food that are not good for our health. So what about something like arachidonic acid?
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Arachidonic acid is a 20-carbon omega-6 fatty acid. We make it in our bodies. All animals make it in our bodies. Our cell membrane phospholipids need some of these to stiffen up. They have to be the right flexibility and porosity, if you will. So we do need to make it in our bodies. But if we eat it, we're in big trouble. Because the arachidonic acid is made in our body through the cyclooxygenase enzymes, COX-1 and 2, into prostaglandin E2, highly inflammatory to the brain, very damaging to the brain. So you should never eat arachidonic acid. Now, the worst part is that arachidonic acid is also converted by the lipoxygenase enzyme, LOX5. And that makes, well, I guess I can say this word for you. Okay, be prepared to enjoy. I apologize to the audience. Hydroperoxyeicosatetraenoic acid. That a nice mouthful? That is what the lipoxygenase makes out of arachidonic acid. Now, what if you take aspirin, Advil, any of the NSAIDs? What's their job? Their job is to block arachidonic acid from becoming inflammatory, pain-causing, and artery-constricting and clogging eicosanoids inside the human body. So it's a really bad idea to eat these arachidonic acid foods. And so which ones are they in? They're highest actually in eggs, poultry products, and meat. They're not that high in dairy products. I've seen that as a mistake sometimes, but I analyze these things. So it's really fish, surprisingly, can be high in arachidonic acid and in EPA. So they're having completely opposite effects. One is putting inflammation down, the other is raising it up. The net result is perhaps not as good as you might want.
So let's be clear here. So one of the highest foods I've seen arachidonic acid is eggs. People say, oh, I eat eggs because it's good for my brain. Certainly the inflammation from the arachidonic acid is not good for people's brains. Is that right?
Right. Now, eggs do have phospholipids in them.
Right.
And phospholipids, there's 4 phospholipids, phosphatidylinositol, phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, and phosphatidylethanolamine. Those are the 4 phospholipids that we can incorporate onto our cell membranes. And they have their preferences where they want to incorporate. So phosphatidylcholine is important. After all, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. So we do need it, yes. And it is in eggs, yes. However, why not just eat some beans, okay?
Right.
Get all you need. And you don't get any of that arachidonic acid. Now, that's not the only problem with eggs. Very high cholesterol, and they also can contain other problematic substances such as lipopolysaccharides.
Can you talk more about LPS? That'd be great.
Yes. Lipopolysaccharides are endotoxins, as they're commonly known. They are the cell membrane, 80% of the cell membrane of gram-negative bacteria. So if you take a cow and you kill it, the gram-negative bacteria grows. We all know you have to cook it to kill the bacteria so you don't die. Okay, so everybody cooks it. And then you have killed the bacteria, but the cell membranes remain. The lipopolysaccharides remain. And they're not restricted in food by the EPA or the FDA or anything like that. So when we eat the lipopolysaccharides, they go into our stomach, into our intestine, and they are fatty substances. They often will get together with saturated fats, be pulled into chylomicrons, which then released into our bloodstream. When that happens, I mean, one study, they gave college students one thin crust cheese pizza, and it increased their inflammatory cytokines 65 times within 2 hours. Wow. So cheese is another big source. It's formed in cheese during the aging process. So yogurt and milk don't have much of these lipopolysaccharides, but actually they do, but the advanced glycation end products are formed in cheese. The lipopolysaccharides are in any dairy product. So the lipopolysaccharides create inflammation in the body. Our body has surveillance cells. We're looking for a bloodborne infection. A bloodborne infection can lead to sepsis and death very quickly. Even the most advanced antibiotics have trouble with sepsis. It's a very difficult thing that many old folks die of. So we have these surveillance cells called toll-like receptors, and they spot this LPS in the bloodstream and pretty much start screaming, we have an infection. They trigger the nuclear factor kappa B that blasts out cytokines like interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor. And you have a cytokine storm in your bloodstream that goes into your brain. Those cytokines go into your brain, and they create inflammation. They activate the microglia. Then that makes more cytokines. It's an alarm reaction to our body that destroys brain cells. And this, of course, is not necessary. If you don't eat animal-derived foods, you don't get lipopolysaccharides. They're not found in plant foods except for the occasional contamination with a fertilizer, like a sewage sludge fertilizer might have them. But in plants, they're not found.
Right. And my understanding is they're heat stable. So even though you might cook the animal product, if it has LPS, it's still going to be there when it gets into your gut.
Right. It's not degraded by cooking, any of the methods of cooking that we use. In fact, the longer it sits around your refrigerator, the more lipopolysaccharides are formed. So as food is aged in the market and in our refrigerators, it can create more of these, again, only if it's an animal-derived food. And again, it's found in meat, chicken, fish, all poultry, pork, and dairy products, and eggs.
And then I saw an illustration in one of your papers showing that comparing people with healthy brains, people who are young, to people with early Alzheimer's to advanced Alzheimer's, as their brain function goes down, the level of LPS or endotoxin goes up. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. So in normal, healthy young people, they looked at serum in that study. The lipopolysaccharides in the serum was quite low. And then when people had mild cognitive impairment, it was way higher. When people got into Alzheimer's disease, it was double again. So the young, healthy people had almost none. And then normal, aged people will have some. And we're saying normal because they're not plant-based. They're normal Americans. And they will have some, and then double for mild cognitive impairment, double again for Alzheimer's disease. So you could actually use lipopolysaccharides as a test for dementia. Because as we eat more of these products that create these problems, then we get more dementia.
Wow.
It can be used as a marker.
It's a marker. Wow. Are there other chemicals or things that are in food that lead to inflammation like the ones we just spoke about?
Well, as far as brain cell death, I think it's worth a mention that the persistent organic pollutants, such as organochlorine pesticides, polychlorinated biphenyls, DDT, its breakdown product DDE, many of these are fat-loving, so they're bioaccumulated in feed animals. And, when they grind up the dead chickens and then they feed that to the cows, that the chickens have bioaccumulated it already from their feed, and then the cows rebioaccumulate that. So it's really higher levels when they do that. And that's common practice in feedlots. So you're getting a high level. Then humans eat the cows over and over again, bioaccumulating these incredibly damaging toxins. Now, they're well known to promote cancer, but they also are very damaging to the brain. Studies on Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease are showing brain cell death from these pollutants. How can you avoid them? Eat lower on the food chain. Plants.
Makes sense. Wow, that's powerful. Are there any other, well, in terms of the ideal diet, what is the ideal diet? I understand in your study you cut out 4 bad things, but and again, we're not asking anyone here to be perfect, but there's some of my patients say, Dr. Josh, what's the ideal diet? What's the ideal diet for my brain? What would you tell them?
I think that brain and body is very similar. The ideal diet would be, we want to get enough of the nutrients that we need. That's real simple. So we're going to need at least 10% protein, a little more if you're, pregnant, very active, muscle building, you could go up a few percent. As far as, calories, we need a certain number of calories to maintain body weight. That's really obvious. As far as fats and oils go, there are 2 essential fatty acids, linoleic acid and alpha-linolenic acid. I have seen even in scientific literature, scientists say that EPA and DHA are essential fatty acids. They are not for adult humans. They are for babies, infants. So these are not essential because we make them ourselves. I would like to see a diet that, when I analyze it with a diet doctor, every single nutrient's checked off. You got enough zinc, you got enough selenium. So the ideal diet for me would be, I think I'd focus on vegetables first because they're just the best for you. Vegetables and sprouts would be number 1 for nutrients. As many as you can eat anyway, raw, cooked, however you can enjoy them. Now, my wife has several cookbooks and helps people understand how to make things delicious. And one of her best techniques is if you make a sauce, like her creamy walnut dressing, it's totally vegan, but it's so good. If you put that on broccoli, you're going to eat every bite. But if you don't, you're not going to want to eat it that much. So again, there's ways to eat the vegetables to make them really tasty. Fruits, I think, are really helpful. I know Brian Clement doesn't like fruit for cancer patients, but we are primates, and fruit is really good, especially the berries. They are the most power-packed of all the fruits. And, something like bananas are not so desirable, but I eat them for calories and fun.
Awesome.
You're fine. So we've covered vegetables and fruits. And then I think whole grain products are excellent. Let's not just focus on wheat. There's so many grains out there, quinoa, barley, buckwheat, and lots of fun grains to eat. And we should experiment with those and see ways to make them tasty. When I analyze diets, these grains, surprisingly, people call them carbos. They have a lot of protein.
Right.
Do you know that? There's a lot of protein in grains.
Of course.
And, oatmeal, spaghetti, things like this, you really have more protein than you would think.
Right. Especially if it's not highly processed, where they've gotten rid of all of the protein.
Actually, no. The highly processed grains are higher in protein.
Oh, interesting.
So the white noodles have more than the whole grain noodles. The white bread has more protein than the whole grain bread because you got a lot of fiber and other things that are good for you that are taken out.
Oh, interesting.
So
I didn't realize
left.
that. Wow.
It's just what's left. And actually, for babies who need more protein, they can't often live on pure whole foods. They're going to need some concentrated sources of protein. So we have vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and we have to include beans and all legumes in there. If people go to a plant-based diet and they're not eating legumes, they're not satisfied. They're not feeling full. And of course, the healthiest way would be to cook them up and eat them. But for some people, we work on the Maui Memory Clinic here on Maui, and a lot of people don't want to cook beans, and they're used to having a burger at dinner. So we get them a pea protein Beyond Burger, which the reformulated one is lower in saturated fat, much better. So they can go in there. Yeah, they went from like 6 or 7 grams per serving to 2, and 2 is quite acceptable. They used avocado oil instead of coconut oil. Of course, that's going to make a big difference. So you can get your beans in other ways. You can get canned beans are more convenient, or them made into burgers and sausages and all kinds of these alternative meats. As has been pointed out, these are processed foods, and yet they have a nice nutrient profile and can very much boost health, especially the soy-based products. I would prefer that they be organic if they were soy-based products, and that's hard to find.
Of course. The next thing is, I understand you're in Hawaii, Dr. Steve, which is amazing. But for those of our listeners who don't live in a tropical place, where do you recommend getting fruits and vegetables, especially in the winter?
Oh, supermarkets have berries in the. I mean, Costco's, Walmart, all the stores have these, and often have them organic and frozen. There's an advantage to frozen berries. They're picked ripe instead of picked green. And when they're picked ripe now, I don't know if you know the way it's made, but they take the, let's say, blueberries, and they dunk them very quickly into boiling water and then pull them out. So the very outside is sanitized for bacteria. Then they freeze them. So they're basically raw, 99% raw on the inside. It doesn't really damage them. So you're getting ripe and nutrient rich instead of, now I do like to buy the unfrozen organic blueberries too. And they're a different flavor, different feeling. But you can get those at stores. I know Amazon will deliver through Whole Foods Market, and there's DoorDash and all those others. So it's possible. And it needn't cost more. If you're actually, let's say a person decided, well, I'm going to cut out, meat, poultry, fish, and cheese, and I'm going to go buy expensive plant products, it's not going to cost more because those products are expensive. So it can be done on a budget too.
Makes sense. Wow.
The healthier you eat, the cheaper it is.
That's so true. So any other tips for people with brain disorders, whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or people who just don't want to get those disorders?
Sure. And I do want to mention a couple of others, non-food related things. Exercise really helps. Exercise creates brain-derived neurotropic factor and other trophic factors that create more connections between your brain cells. Also, continually learning. For me, it's reading science studies, but it could be learning a new language or doing art or anything like that. Even social activity really boosts the brain. So social activity and learning are very good to keep your brain active. So those are some tips I would give people. Also, what we find is that anxiety interferes with thinking. And many times people, when they're under a lot of stress, they don't think clearly. So conquering that anxiety through exercise, my technique, or meditation, prayer, whatever works for you to get that anxiety down. And again, that's one place where plants, say a little bit of passion flower or skullcap, these plants very much relax people and can be done safely. You should, talk to your doctor so they don't interfere with your medications. But this is another way to relax. I do prefer exercise for relaxation. And we do find that when people conquer their anxiety, their brains are much sharper. They score better results on their tests. I do want to mention those non-dietary things too. Thank you.
That's awesome. So are there any questions I should have asked but didn't get to?
Well, I think that the big problem is a willingness. Well, you mentioned that people hear things. They hear the paleo diet. They hear about all these. The carnivore diet is big now. When I analyze that one, I've never seen a diet with zero vitamin C before.
Right.
And zero fiber. Never seen that before. Yeah. The Atkins diet got down to 1 or 2 grams, which is really terrible, but I've never seen zero. Really scary.
Yeah, you don't want to get scurvy. That's not good.
Yes, it's entirely possible. I think that's possible. Try to get good sources of information. For me and for you, that means that it's verified by peer-reviewed medical studies. And not all peer-reviewed medical studies are good. I have seen medical studies. I keep studies. I have about over 12,000 studies that I've named specially and kept because they're so good. But I do have a folder called Bad Science.
Okay.
And when it's funded by an industry that makes a certain food, they can come up with conclusions that are completely wrong. which I find interesting, but I wouldn't want people to get misled. And those same studies seem to get the headlines too.
Of course.
Remember the cover of Time magazine showed butter is good?
Right. Right. But I mean, there are people even today in the popular press, they're promoting putting butter in your coffee, in the morning.
The bulletproof diet.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I analyzed that one too.
Wow. Whew. So
yeah, I know the creators of the bulletproof diet. That's really interesting. But when you analyze it and you see the saturated fats were really through the roof on that one. And it's a very dangerous diet, in my opinion.
wow.
From a negative.
And just to review, what is so bad about increasing the saturated fat in your diet? It's basically changing the shape of the lipid bilayers. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. So what you're doing is the cell membrane is changing so it doesn't have enough LDL receptors. Now, the LDL circulates fats from the liver, and when it finds an LDL receptor, it delivers those fats, and it goes on. When it's done, it's get broken up, and the HDL takes it to the liver for disposal. Okay, all that's fine. But fewer LDL receptors, and that doesn't happen as well, and you build up atherosclerotic plaque. Now, another fascinating point is that when you have too much saturated fat, your liver cannot pull the cholesterol out of your bloodstream as effectively. Our livers pull 1,000 milligrams of cholesterol out of our arteries every day. Put it in the bile, goes in our intestine. If we eat a lot of fiber, it goes away. Some is reabsorbed. Okay, so less and less is reabsorbed. So very powerful. People only eat maybe 100 or 200 up to 400 or 600 milligrams of cholesterol a day. So the principal source is that, but it doesn't get into the liver because of the high saturated fat. So those are two of the, I think, prominent mechanisms by which high saturated fat diets promote atherosclerotic plaque, high cholesterol, and stroke, heart attacks, vascular dementia, all that.
Awesome. And Dr. Steve, I know you read research articles avidly. Is there any new technology in the nutrition side that you see coming down the pike in the next 6 months to a year that would potentially impact our dementia patients or just the audience listening to this today?
There's such a focus on lab tests that I would like to say, I like to test the diet. You're going right to the source. If I analyze someone's diet, and I usually give them 12 to 14 colored graphs that show most of your saturated fat, and this one guy came from McDonald's milkshakes. And it turns out he didn't like them that much. He could quit them, no problem. So he substituted something else. So you can see which foods are killing you. When you look at it and you say, wow, look at all the protein I got from that spaghetti. Or you look at it and say, this junk food doesn't have any vitamins or minerals to speak of. So by dietary analysis, you can really get the idea. And I do dietary analysis for people. People all over the world send me their diets. And, I convert them into grams. I calculate to the milligram, and I will tell them exactly what they got and didn't get, and more important, which foods. Now, you get a blood test that says your cholesterol is high. It doesn't say which foods are causing that. So I want to empower people to improve their diets. And then let's say someone's low in zinc, very common. So I can tell them a few zinc foods that they can eat. How about some almonds? Real easy.
Awesome. So Dr. Steve, how can people find you? Are you on social media?
No, I'm really not.
Okay.
I'm a busy guy between the clinic work and my research, giving lectures constantly and all that. And I also do peer review for various journals.
Okay.
And I'm reviewing lectures. I don't go on social media. My website is drsteveblake.com. And I have my 25 books there on the website. And each book has a free video. So you can learn a lot about the book and the problem, whether it's Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, migraines, autism, heart disease, heart attacks and strokes. I have a long list of books that are directly connected to what we put in our mouths.
Got it. And I know you're extremely busy with all those activities. If someone wants to reach out to you, is that even possible?
Sure. It's easy. You can write me at steve@drsteveblake.com, and I'm happy to answer questions. There might be a slight delay, but I'll get to it. And then I can send you an answer. Also, I charge $150 for the dietary analysis. And sometimes, in different countries or when people are poor, I'll reduce that price. But that allows me to go through the diet and analyze it perfectly and give everybody a really good idea of which foods are keeping them healthy and which foods are making them sick.
Wow. Dr. Steve, thank you so much for being willing to share your wisdom with us, but also the fact that you've literally been a researcher in this field of nutritional biochemistry for many, many decades. You've written the textbook, and I want to say thank you for that, for your service.
Oh, my pleasure. I couldn't stop if I tried. It's fascinating stuff, as you know, because you do the same thing.
100%. All right. Well,
thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that it's cameras are rolling smoothly.
Definitely. Dr. Steve, this has been exceptional. Your biochemical clarity, your rigorous nutrient quantification, and your commitment to practical application for real patients. This is exactly the level of detail our audience craves. For everyone listening, if you want more from Steve Blake, explore his books, Nutritional Neuroscience and Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, and his nutrient analysis tools. And as always, the brain is plastic, responsive, and improvable at any age. There is hope. See you next time on the Alzheimer's Breakthrough Podcast. Peace and plants.